I'm not sure if they're going to put the sleeper burst split back in there, but they're going to put it so that you can stop the clock. Um, from what I understand, I don't have all the
So
specifics.
do you mean like in Canada where you get a 16-hour window and you can budget like a 2-hour nap somewhere in the middle of the day kind of thing?
Yeah, that 16-hour window is a crap. I don't even know why people, because all you, yeah, it's the same idea. You can do the same thing, but really it affects your hours. You still got to take the 8 hours off at the end and all of that. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's based. That's what it's for. That if you want to take a nap in the middle of the afternoon, you can stop the clock from just going through that 14 hours. I'm not sure that's the best scenario. I would rather see the sleeper burst split come back in because and take it away from 10 back to 8. The way that we got it here in Canada, right? Because
Yep.
I used to run that way. I used to just do Chicago's and stuff. I didn't do California or nothing, but even Chicago, New Jersey, that is the only way. I could not imagine if I had to sit a customer in New Jersey for 10 hours. They would go ballistic. Hey, if there was only 2 docks half the places we went anyway, where are you going to go? So that was a way that we were able to pick up loads, take naps, pick up, deliver, take naps, come back, cross the border at 2 in the morning. I did that like daily. So
Yeah.
I think they need to put that back in. Anyway, my take on it. So what else we got? So that's the recent news. Any other recent news, or should we move on to books?
Um, yeah, I mean, I could go on at length, but we'll move on to books.
I
We'll move
know,
on to books.
I know you can go on at length. That's not just. I didn't know if there was more news coming out after that. So yeah, it's important news. We're hearing it up here, and I'm hoping in the next week or so, I'm supposed to be at a seminar. I'm hoping some of that stuff might get cleared up. I don't know. We kind of hear about it after. We hear the same as you, right? Oh, this is
Yeah.
what they're doing, but we never actually hear if they've done it until they've done it. So we don't know.
Yeah, I will. I'll send you the links to all this news I'm referencing. You can put it in the show
Okay,
notes.
cool.
I'll send you the Amazon links for these books.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
So
all right.
let's talk about the books. Let's talk about let's go back in time and talk about Jimmy Hoffa. It's Out of the Jungle, right? Is that the one you're going to talk about?
Correct. Yes, I have a copy right here.
All right.
Those watching the video can see. It's very rare. So let me preface this book review.
Okay.
The 2 books that I'm going to discuss with you, and hopefully your listeners can go and find somewhere, are very academic. They're written both by university professors who are not necessarily involved in trucking, especially this guy. So Jimmy Hoffa occupies a special place. Like if you've ever talked to older drivers, like really older drivers who were around during the height of the power of the Teamsters Union, Jimmy Hoffa was the man. Jimmy Hoffa built up the International Brotherhood of Teamsters to be the single most powerful and highest membership union to ever exist in American history to this day. Bigger than the auto workers, bigger than the steel workers. He was the biggest subdivision of the, I think it's the AFL-CIO before they kind of butted heads, and they got. I'm not quite sure where they're at now, but anyway, the book, the central thesis of this book is about how Jimmy Hoffa was different than other labor leaders, right? It basically a lot of labor leaders and people that pay attention to politics. We're going to get a little political now. Are typically on the left, either ideologically or culturally. And at the time, in the 50s and 60s, there was a lot of the labor movement was very, either socialist or not too many steps away from being communist. There was a lot of communist infiltration into many labor unions. And a lot of guys, even today, like the trucking business is famous for only being unionized within the LTL subdivision of it, which isn't very much. But back in the day, Hoffa unionized nearly the whole damn thing, and he became incredibly powerful, such that Robert F. Kennedy, who was the brother of JFK, in the 1960s launched a series of court cases which ended up with Hoffa in jail because he was known for having some dalliances with organized crime, shall we put it. Right. So he wasn't like the cleanest character, but one of one of the takeaways I get from this book, one of the points being made in it, is that Hoffa was not one of these ideologues. He was not a socialist or a communist. He didn't care for those other people in the union movement. in fact, during the Second World War, when his career in the Teamsters was just ascending, he had some meetings with the government and he convinced them. He said, "You guys want me to be in charge of the Teamsters to keep everything moving for the war effort, because the rest of these guys over here are probably going to sympathize with the Russians and like have as many strikes as possible because they're not terribly interested in the war effort, right?" Now, that said, I'm not saying that's a good or bad thing. I'm very mixed on war myself, but essentially, that was his thing. I'm going to help the government, and I'm going to keep a lid on any strikes. So, and along with that too is that he understood like the sort of the market aspect of being in a union. Like he understood the union as a business, and it had to respond to the same market forces as the companies for which his membership were working. Right. So if you're a union, and unions used to compete for membership, you had to actually offer something to your members. So Hoffa actually got good deals. His people loved him. Teamsters were like the highest paid workers in America for a long, long time. He got awesome contracts. He made sure that everybody got paid really good money. And I mean, obviously, the Teamsters skimmed off the top, and that helped consolidate his power. Let's not make any bones about that. Yeah. But like, he produced material results for his members, and his members loved him for it. He wasn't like some pie in the sky, I want to have a revolution and have the workers take over the means of production, socialist nut job. He wanted to work for his people, like legitimately. So in the years since Hoffa died, and I don't call it a disappearance because he would be like 106 or 103 years old today. He's gone. You know, his legacy has been mixed. You know, there's been a few movies made about him. Some people think he was a crook. Some, you know, like not a whole lot of people know about the guy. And I feel like if you're not a truck driver that's been in the business a long time to know old timers who are around when Hoffa was at his peak, you might not know that either. So if you're like sitting in your bunk at the truck stop, instead of farting around on the internet, here's some history book. If you're into history and you want to hear about a guy who, and I mean, you know, let's say you dabble in politics like many truck drivers do. Jimmy Hoffa supported Richard Nixon. Here's a union leader that voted Republican and told all his members to do the same thing, right? So it's just an interesting dichotomy and an interesting guy.
Okay, so what makes you, other than the interest for that, what makes you want to do a verbal book report on that? Or you were saying you're doing book reports on these. What's making you do that? Why are you doing that?
Oh man, I just think that there's a lot of people in our business who have a lot of time on their hands to read. You're getting screwed around at customers waiting to load and unload. You know, trucking is a diverse business. There's all kinds of people with all kinds of ideas, all kinds of interests, all kinds of backgrounds. I mean, you know, there's millions of truck drivers on the road, right? So if you want to understand A, something about the history of your business, and B, you want to know something about this character who dominated our field for so long, I think it's a really interesting book. Yep. And I'd like to pass it along to people.